Hello and welcome back to Glowing in Tech. I'm 𝗝cie.
And I'm Chantal.
And this is
Glowing in Tech.
So today we've got two incredible guests with us. We have Roxanne and Joanna. Would you two like to give us a little bit of an introduction into who you are and what TechTalk is?
Yeah, so my name is Roxanne, one of the co-founders at TechTalk. We started TechTalk about a year and a half ago, where basically we're looking to teach people how to break into tech. We actually started teaching people more specifically about the non-coding side of tech because both Joanna and I have actually built our career on the non-coding side of tech. But last year we kind of just blew up, and since then we've kind of just been teaching people a little bit about everything. But in terms of me, I'm half French, half from Cameroon, but grew up most of my life in Cape Town, South Africa. And I moved to the UK about 7 years ago for university, and since then have worked in tech. I started my career in sales and then moved on to go-to-market strategy. And then now I work for the revenue operations function at a FinTech company. And basically throughout my career, I started at startups, then I moved to scale up, then I moved to big tech. And across each one of those jumps, I kind of learned a lot, like what it takes to really stand out as an applicant. And that's kind of what we're here to do today.
Yeah, it's amazing. And we'll get more into the kind of journey you've had because you've been at some impressive companies and in some really varied roles. And it's got loads of questions on it.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you.
Amazing. Well, my name is Joana. I am from Brazil, but I moved to London about 8 years ago. And I came here to study. I was actually studying engineering before in Brazil. And then I decided I didn't want to do that anymore. So then I came to the UK and started studying here. That's where I met Rox. So we studied together in business school. And then we lived in China together and a lot of experiences.
Oh,
wow. Yeah, so that's when we really became friends, was when we were living in China.
That's so cool.
And from there, basically at uni, I got an internship at a company doing a customer support role. I didn't really know what I wanted to do. So I was kind of applying for everything. And then I got the first thing that came on my inbox and started working at that company. Then they gave me more opportunities to explore different areas, ended up in marketing, completely fell in love with it, and been growing my career there since then. So yeah, that's a little bit about me.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And I'd love to kind of dive into how did TechTalk come about? Like what was it? What spurred it on between you guys?
Yeah, someone asked me that question, I think last week, and I was trying to think how did TechTalk originally start? How did the idea start? I don't remember. But I think it originated from what Rox was saying on. We started thinking about okay, there are a lot of people going to tech now because tech is becoming a boom, especially after COVID. There's a lot of people applying for tech companies, not necessarily tech roles that you need to code. So we're it's crazy the amount of people that we started hearing from, I think, our network of wanting to migrate from jobs working in restaurants or working as a nurse, architect, wanting to go into tech. And we're this is very interesting because also people didn't have a knowledge of I have no idea what I can do in tech. What are the roles? What are the options? We're yeah, that's something at university that we also didn't know. No one was telling us there is a side of tech of marketing, sales, customer support. So I think we just wanted to spread the awareness of this. And this is how TechTalk originated, was to spread awareness on tech that is much more than coding and how people could understand a little bit more about that.
Yeah. So the way it started is that, we always wanted to, do a project together. We've worked on multiple side projects together before, and we were okay, we need to get back into it. There's something that we need to, we really enjoy working together when it comes to that. And then one of the things from our previous projects that we learned is that it makes sense for us to do something that's already engraved in what we do in our day to day. So whether it has to do with career or something that, we kind of both have a relation to. And then as we were kind of it took a couple of months to think about the idea. But then one of the things that, that we were noticing is whenever we told people that we work in tech, they'd be oh, cool. So what coding language do you do? Or for which company are you a software engineer? And it's not a software engineer. Actually, I work in go-to-market strategy, or oh, no, actually, I work in marketing, or I work in sales. And so it was really funny to see that there was always this assumption that if you told people you work in tech, that they thought automatically that you had to have coding skills. And we were wait, there's something here. Especially I think in the UK market, because you would see always day in the life working at Google. As Joanna was saying, there was really this boom about how awesome the tech industry is. And it's obviously grown a lot in the US. And I feel in the US, there's a bit more maybe transparency or awareness of like the range of roles that exist, but in the UK, maybe not as much. And so, yeah, people were like, we were like, just from the amount of questions that people were asking us, we're like, okay, I feel like we have a platform of, there's maybe this like gap where we can be teaching people about this. And like, yeah, we've just evolved since then.
Yeah, no, it's really incredible because, as someone that, has worked in marketing and tech, so we're outnumbering you today.
Yeah, I'm outnumbered with the non-techies.
The non-coders.
Yeah, the non-coders, exactly. I feel like the focus is always on the developers and like the software engineers, but the one thing that like I've realized as well in my career is like, you could build like the best product in the world, but if nobody knows about it, it's not going anywhere. No one's going to use it. So I love the fact that you're providing a space for people that like really kind of push the business to be a business. It's amazing. So like, tell me more about your community. Like how do you engage your community? How big is your community?
Yeah. So we started about like a year and a half ago. And last year, when we came into the year, we had less than 5,000 followers on Instagram. So Instagram is kind of like the main platform that we have, I would say, for like education purposes and like where we share most of our content. So we started with about 5,000 at the beginning of last year, and we ended the year at like 185,000.
Yeah, I think
That
so.
is insane.
Incredible growth.
So just
Two marketers at the helm though.
Yeah, you can tell the marketing is in play here.
Yeah. No, the marketing space. I mean, gotta give a lot of kudos to Joana there. Like, she really put like the vision, everything together when it came to that. And then it was just like execution mode, just like, figure out what reels do well, like what is the type of content that people are actually finding value in, and then just making sure that we repeat that over and over again. And then, we've kind of just kept growing. So Instagram is kind of like where we share most of our content, but then we also do like a lot of workshops. We also have our website. We do a lot of partnerships as well.
Yeah, we have the B2C and the B2B side. So like on the B2C side, we go a lot to like consumers. So we have courses, we have like live programs that we host. We have like coaching, like LinkedIn CV services. We also go to like communities and do that side. And we also have like the B2B side where we're working with like recruitment agencies, working more with companies, also try to create more awareness for companies as well. Again, in this for job seekers, because there are a lot of companies struggling to hire too in this market. But yeah, we've been growing a lot. I think overall now, like across all socials, we probably have like more than 220,000 people.
It's amazing.
Yeah, it's amazing.
And it really shows that there's definitely a gap and people are needing this content that you guys are producing and the resources that you're building. I want to ask, like, why do you think there is that gap? What is left? Why is there a difference between the US and the UK? Because I definitely agree that it's there. But I'm just curious, like, where do you think that comes from?
I think right now, like, there's a big issue with hiring, and especially after COVID. I think in the UK and the US is similar in terms of like how the market is reacting. But after COVID, like a lot of companies basically like started hiring or like stopped hiring. But the amount of applicants in the market like completely boomed because now you don't need to be in London to apply for a job in London. That's a reality. Like you have remote work, you have hybrid work. So the amount of people looking for jobs like increased insanely. If we look at like the amount of companies hiring, comparing now before COVID is more or less the same. So like that hasn't changed much, but it's just like there's so many people out there. And like with AI as well, like you have people creating CVs like crazy, applying for 1,000 jobs using like one extension and one automation. So like companies are getting flooded. Like they have like 10,000 CVs. They're like, how am I going to go over 10,000 CVs? Like this is actually crazy. So in tech especially, I think because it's booming more, like it's being crazier than the other industries.
Yeah.
But it's just like a matter of people don't know what to do in terms of like getting their application to be seen to start with, because realistically companies are not going over all of those 10,000 CVs. So like, how do you make sure that your CV is getting picked up? Because I think the thing that we hear most is like, I'm not getting any interviews. I'm applying for 10,000 jobs and I don't get any interviews.
Yeah.
And so this is like a big issue right now.
Yeah, I think like the way the markets change is that it's just a lot harder to be seen now, or like, so there's like a lot more before. Maybe, if you did like a couple of cold applications and you had a good CV, like the likelihood that like 1 out of like the 10 companies that you applied to would at least get back to you. But because there's so many applications being sent, and as Joanna said, like recruiters and hiring managers are getting flooded, like the likelihood that your CVs, it's probably not even being seen. And that's what I keep telling people. It's like, it's actually better for you to get a rejection because at least you know that like your CV's been seen and there's been an active decision of them being like, you're not the one versus like being ghosted, because what's probably happening is that nobody even knows you've applied to start with. So there's like a lot in terms of like what it takes to stand out as a candidate and like how do you put yourself in front of the recruiter and hiring manager, which realistically is going to go above just doing cold applications. Like it's going to be having an optimized LinkedIn so that recruiters are finding you instead of, you know, always having to go to them. It also means like networking a lot. Like I think networking is going to be like a superpower and it's going to keep becoming a superpower like the more you choose to grow your career. So yeah, I think having more of like that, instead of applying just on like one strategy, but having that multi-strategy is going to be really important for like people. And like there's a shift that maybe not everyone has kind of realized that that's happening yet. And the people that do realize it, like they're the ones that are seeing success, but the ones that aren't using that multi-point strategy are the ones that are struggling a bit more from what we see.
Yeah. And it's crazy as well because like we have so many people, like senior people even, like we help everyone from like head off, VP, director level, but like we have people like working in really good companies. The moment they get a layoff, because now everyone is like, a lot of people are getting laid off now. Like I'm getting so many messages because January is like the peak of layoff. And everyone is like I have a really good background, but I have no idea what to do now. Like, so people are only realizing when they're actually needing a job as well, which is part of the problem because like you need to be building your network as you grow your career.
And your personal brand.
Yeah.
And I feel like in tech now, like the rise of the tech influencer, those day in the lives, you know, they ruin the industry for the world.
I absolutely blame them for the downfall of so much.
Like that's the downfall of product managers because of those TikToks. But also I think it's become so important that like you have to do your job really well. But then you also have to represent yourself online really well. And you have to produce content and do all these extra things that you would never have to do before 2020.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, you have to go above and beyond. Like it really is what it is like in today's market. And like not going above and beyond just means that you're not going to be seen or like you're not going to be, because as you said, like there's a lot of people that actually have the skills. And like I speak to them, I'm like, you've actually got all the skills, you've got the experience, but you just don't know how to articulate it. Like you don't know how to allow the recruiter to put 2 and 2 together. And like the way I always say it is like you need to like basically give them, instead of like, you know, if you have a puzzle and you have like a bunch of pieces together, it's not for them to put the puzzle together. What you need to is to come to them with the pieces of puzzles already together so that they can see the picture and they can be like, oh, I understand why you're a good fit for this role that I'm looking to hire. Like you need to make it as easy as possible for the recruiter and the hiring manager to understand why it's you. Like don't make it work for them. Like make it as easy as possible. And so that's why like having your personal brand, having your LinkedIn, making sure that your story is very clear, but also when you're articulating that story, it's all about positioning. And a lot of people, I think, because you don't really learn these kind of things like at university, you don't learn them, you know, at work. So a lot of people, even though they're really good and they have the skills, they just don't know how to tell their story and they don't know how to position themselves. And so they struggle. But then as soon as they get it, it's like, oh, wow, like now I know what I need to do. Like it makes sense now. So
especially from like a technical perspective, when you're speaking to a recruiter, it's often like they don't understand the domain that you're in, and the things that you know are like super, they can be quite technical. So as somebody, you know, a couple of years ago where LinkedIn was, you were getting constantly bombarded by recruiters, to now this new job market where you have to go out and look for things. It's like a complete mindset shift, isn't it? To like present who you are and what you can bring to the table in a way that's palatable to a recruiter.
Yeah, and it's even like depending on the industry, depending on the role, like as a marketer and in like my space, you need to like tweet a lot. You have to be active. You need to be like, you actually have to be like insanely like chronically online. And people need to know you for you to be valuable. And we've like recruited people and it's been like, oh, like, do they have a good following?
Really?
Yeah, that's crazy.
How important, community is so important.
Yeah.
Yeah, put your work out. That's another thing.
Yeah.
Like you need to be putting your work out, whether that's, you know, like whether that's like some roles are more easy, like UX design, things like that. But like even as somebody in RevOps, like, you know, go on podcasts, like or write a post here and there. I'm not saying write every day, but like, you know, maybe write about insights that you see or about like tooling in the market that's happening. Like you need to show that you have that curious mindset. I think sometimes people, when they hear the word like personal brand, one, they always think of like LinkedIn or they always think online, but also your personal brand is very much like, how do people, like, when you're not in the room, what are people saying about you? And so that's also just like, even within your company, what is your personal brand? Like when people are like, oh, like what do you think of Roxanne? Like what they say is also part of your personal brand, and that can take you, you know, as part of your next job. Like if you have a strong personal brand at your current company and you're looking for a next job, you know, you might know somebody at that job because you used to work with them, and like that's also part of your personal brand that you can leverage. So there's not just like the outwardly facing personal brand, but there's also like the internal one as well.
But especially for customer facing roles, because like I have sales in my team as well in marketing. So like I hire for BDRs. And I'm like, one of the things that I'm looking at is like how active they are on social media, because as being like in sales or like any customer facing role, like you need to put yourself out there, and like you need to do that. Like the moment that you have the job, like again, all of those relationships, they're going to help you create deals. So like if you're not putting yourself out there, then like I don't think like you're going to be outstanding salesperson, you know? So I think some of those things like are starting to count much more than before, and people are starting to notice that too.
So the technical people are getting really crafty with it. I've seen so many people create AI versions of themselves and that are like scraping their old tweets and developing new tweets that they would say, so that they don't actually have to like do the work of like growing their audience. But they are like speed running like community. It is insane.
I don't know how I feel about that.
It's all over X. It's very easy to do as well.
That's crazy.
One of my friends was explaining it to me. Maybe we'll be in the show notes. Create your own like AIU. It's a huge thing.
I guess if it's trained on your own data and you've already put a lot out there,
because it's better than a ghostwriter. It's faster. It's cheaper. Exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and it's happening. So
I guess I feel like in that instance, I can see that makes sense and that's an okay thing to do. I think the thing that annoys me with like the AI producing content on your behalf is like now when I'm trying to read technical blogs and I'm trying to read opinion pieces on new technology, I'm like, I can just feel it when it's there.
You can tell. They got the buzzwords in there. The thrills.
All the sentences are like the exact same length. I'm like, this is AI.
I feel like that's going to be something in the future as well. Like they're going to it's going to be like such a valuable piece of like people writing it versus AI. And I think they're going to start tagging that. For example, like this piece was written by AI. This piece was not. I think like this is going to be the future. And like the human content is going to be much more valued.
Yeah, absolutely. For the record, I am against the AI bots. I don't have one. You know, I might try it out and let you guys know.
I think your tweets have too much personality.
A
bot wouldn't be able to replicate.
That is true.
So I think one of the things you've mentioned is one of the key things about navigating this really difficult job market is personal brand. But is that still the case for earlier career people who don't necessarily have the experience to fall back on? Because I feel like as somebody who's got a fair amount of experience and has been in the industry for a little while, it can be easier to come up with those concepts. But what's your advice for somebody who's just starting out and isn't really sure where to start with personal brand?
Yeah, I still think there's ways. So for example, like even if you've worked on projects that you've done, or like if you've done an internship, or even like just curiosity. So, you know, if you're looking to break into marketing, like showing that you're doing research about marketing, or like you're giving like exactly what you just mentioned, right? Like a recent graduate could be writing about that and like the trends that they're seeing in terms of, you know, bots or like, like personal branding information that's being created by AI, and like what does this mean for the future? Like I think just showing your mindset, like your critical thinking mindset, is like a way to kind of stand out. So even if you don't have that much experience, just showing that you have that level of like proactiveness is something that not every recent graduate is doing. And so it is a way to kind of, be different, I would say.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah, great.
Yeah, it's like showing your uniqueness.
Yeah.
You know? Because, you know, at the end of the day, you know, every company has like this archetype of like employee they want. And you know, you just want to show that you fit into that. And not everyone does. Like, they might be amazing. They might have the experience. They might have the names behind them, but they just might not vibe with the company.
Yeah.
So you just want to show that you do.
No, for sure. Now culture fit is everything.
So important.
Like, all companies, that's the thing that they're watching out for. So, like, even me, like, when I'm interviewing now, like, the first round of interviews, I'm like, is this person going to be a good culture fit or not? Because if not, like, there's no point moving them forward. So people need to start showing that as well. Like, at the beginning of the process, like, okay, how do I like look up like the values of the company? Like, what do they care about, and see if you're going to be a good fit. But yeah, that's playing like a massive part.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Like, even right now, you know, where I'm interviewing, or like I also help with like other roles that are interviewing at my company, and like that's usually is the reason why we do or don't hire someone. Like, even if they have the skill set, like there's even times where, you know, people are technically overqualified. Like, we're looking for people to 2 to 3 years of experience, and like they have more. And like we all sit at the table and we're like, listen, like they've got the skill sets. They did answer the questions. So experience isn't really the problem. Or for us, it's more like, okay, but do they have like the hunger that you need to be at this company? You know, like, do they have kind of like the proactivity? Like, I work at a scale up, so being very independent and proactive is very important. And sometimes, you know, when we're interviewing somebody with very big companies where everything's very process driven, like that's something that we're like, would they be able to do as well? Because we've seen people come from big companies and like not necessarily do well. So it's like, it's not even that they're not a good professional. It's just like, we don't know if they would thrive in this specific environment. And that's something that I think a lot of people should kind of like pay attention to when they're interviewing, is like not just doing research about the company and like where they were founded and the history, but also like where they're looking to go and like how can I show that I would be a good fit in like their future growth. Like, I remember once I was helping someone who, you know, had a very big background in like working at big companies, and he was looking to interview for like a startup, and his answers, so it was a manager role, so it was still senior, but a lot of the answers that he was giving was like, yeah, so like, you know, I'm used to managing like a team of 30 or 50 and all of these kind of things, which is great. Like, obviously it shows his level of seniority and stuff, but the feedback was that we don't know if the feedback from him for his interview, because he ended up getting rejected, was like, we don't know if you'd be able to like get your hands dirty enough. Like, you know, here, like you basically would be a manager, but like you would be a manager on your own to start with. And maybe in a year you would have a team around you, but then the team would maybe be like 1 or 2. And like from the answers you were giving in your interview, you're very used to like having a lot of resources. And so, you know, even though you do the job very well, we just don't know if like this would be a good fit. And so I think that that's something people need to take into consideration when they're interviewing, is like, basically, where's the company going, and like, is that something I can add value to?
Yeah, like you've like broken down like kind of like tech company by size.
Yeah.
I also think that's something that people don't think about when they're looking for jobs.
Yeah.
It's something that like their companies are very different. So let's talk about that a little bit. Let's talk about like the difference between like startups, scale ups, and then like big tech. So startups, scrappy.
Yeah, scrappy, very scrappy.
Not a lot of processes.
No, basically none. A lot of visibility though, like as you said, right? You got to try like a lot of different roles, which is one of the things I really enjoyed, because I started my career in a startup, and like, you know, same to Joanna, I was like, I just need a job. Like, just hire me. I promise I can do whatever you need me to do. But then, so I started in sales. But then, you know, obviously at the beginning of your career, you're not sure what you want to do, and like you still want to explore. And I really like the fact that I could, you know, just go speak to like the head of product and be like, so tell me what do you do? You know, like, how did you get here? And like, same thing with marketing, which, you know, if you were like in a very big company, like you wouldn't have that kind of access or visibility because it's so specialized. So yeah, personally, I really like startups for that reason. Like, if you're still a bit lost, like I would say,
I think early careers, it's a great place to be, because you end up wearing so many hats. Like, you will help out so many different people. You'll learn so much, and it gives you exposure to different roles, especially if you don't know what you want to do. Where did I start? No, I started in like I didn't start in tech. My first tech company was a scale up. Actually.
Okay.
Yeah, it was a scale up.
And what did you think of it? What do you think of scale
Also,
ups?
still quite chaotic.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, they are.
Quite chaotic. A little bit more process.
But then you went from scale up straight into startup, right? Like early stage.
I did.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did.
What was that like?
It was a big drop.
Yeah. So, I mean, so like the scale up was huge. Maybe we had like, not huge, it was maybe like 200-300 people.
Okay.
Yeah, that's big.
Yeah. And then the company I went to was like 50.
Okay.
50. But it was so different. And this one actually had more processes because they've been around for some, they're like a legacy startup, I would say. Like they're not scaling up, but they're just very comfortable being small. So they had a lot more processes, but it was still super scrappy.
Yeah.
I was doing so many things. You know, like my job title didn't even make sense at the end of
But I think that one thing that is great that you learn with startups is like the power to adapt, because it's changing all the time. Like you need to adapt. So throughout my career, I've seen that like people trying to go from startup to big tech is much easier than people going from big tech to startup.
Yeah.
Because people get on a startup, they're like, I'm used to like this very organized way of doing things and like all the processes in place. And like people go to startups, they're like, I can't, like, I don't know how to prioritize. I don't know how to do anything. So I think there's such a power in startups because it kind of prepares you for any stage that you want to go after.
If you're good, you end up writing the processes. You end up being like, guys, we can't do it like this anymore.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I agree.
But then I also think like it's not suited to everybody. Like I love startups.
Yeah.
But there's the element of like everything is urgent all the time.
Oh, yeah.
And like you've got to drop something.
Because it's just fires everywhere. You're trying to put them out.
Yeah.
I always make jokes like, I didn't realize I'm a firefighter. Like, I didn't realize this was the career I came into. Like, every day it's just like, bing, bing,
It's always something. You think it's going fine, next thing you know, like the product just stopped.
Taking down production.
And now you're a product analyst on top of the product job.
Yeah.
But it makes it fun.
It's
always like, it's fun.
It's like a roller coaster.
Yeah.
You get variety.
Yeah.
You know.
You don't get bored.
Yeah, you don't get that in big tech, you know. I feel like sometimes in bigger companies, your scope of work is so much smaller. Yeah. It's like, oh, I'm looking after this button. It's like, okay.
Yeah. But I guess the plus side with bigger is that's where the day in the life stuff comes from.
Yeah. That's where the slides are and the massages. You
can be in the pool.
The nice benefits. Like they all have their own pros and cons.
Yeah, it's true.
Like, the nice lunches.
Breakfast.
Yeah.
I feel like big tech for me is safe.
Yeah.
You know?
It is.
You have that safety net. Like with a startup, you could be here today and gone tomorrow.
Literally.
Yeah.
But like, I think the thrill of that makes you work so hard.
That's true.
I think everything it's almost like it's for every like career is slightly different for each person. So for me, I'm like, I could see myself in big tech, but I think like probably later down the line, you know, when I don't want this, like when I can no longer deal with like today's a good day, the next day is a bad, like when I don't want the fluctuation anymore. Right now I'm like, okay, like I'm young, like, you know, like give me, throw it at me. Like it's fine, like I'll take it. But I feel like, probably like, you know, later down the line, it's like, okay, now I'm just looking for something that's a little bit more stable, a bit more predictable. Clock in at a certain time, can clock out, and like I don't need to be thinking
leave the
about
work.
Yeah,
work.
Exactly. So I think everything has its pros and cons, and it kind of just depends like where you're at in your journey and like what you need in that specific moment in time. But I remember I always wanted to like start my career in big tech.
Me too.
Everyone's like on Facebook.
I feel like you get out of university, you're like, oh, I want to go for the big guy.
Yeah.
Like the Google. I was like applying for American Express. Like I cannot imagine myself working
It's
American
all about
Express.
prestige at university. It's like, oh yeah, what other big name can I go to?
Is that what it is? Do you think it's literally just like because they're recognizable brands?
Yeah.
I think so, yeah.
And they also pay the best.
Yeah.
It's like, do you want to make some money? Because now you haven't been making money for whatever.
Yeah, but now if you notice, like startups are paying better than big tech in some cases.
Yeah.
Or like scale ups as well. Like they start to, especially if it's like you know, in like those industries where you need like that hustle mentality, like FinTechs, or like AI. I mean, AI companies are also starting to pay well because they need like that really good talent. And then also you got the equity. So like if the company does well, then like that's your life.
Look at
sorted.
The NVIDIA guys. We're trying to find the next NVIDIA guys.
Yeah, exactly. So I think there's pros and cons to each. Kind of just depends what you're looking for in that moment.
Yeah, that's something people think about. Like if you're looking for a job now, think about the size of company that you want to go to. Yeah, and check out TechTalk too.
Yeah.
No, we always say that the more targeted you are with your job search, the higher chance you have of success. If you know the job you want to go for, the size of company you want to go for, the industry you want to go for, you just go laser focus on that. And then this is going to increase your success rate because like, you know what you're doing. Like you're not spreading yourself too thin on like 10,000 different things. And that's also one of the biggest mistakes I see people making.
Yeah, it's interesting. Because it's not only that like the fact that you're spreading it out, you're putting less effort into each one, but by being more focused, I think you can come across as more authentically interested in that sector, right?
Yeah, and your story is just on point because you've been saying it so many times.
Yeah.
Like you don't have to diversify your story so much because if you're focused on fintech, then you're focused on fintech, and you can say why. Like, what is your story as to like why you're interested in fintech specifically, and then why this company specifically in fintech. Whereas like if you're doing fintech and then ed tech and then health tech and then whatever tech, it's just confusing. Like the amount of stories you have to like make up as to why you're excited to work in this specific industry.
Yeah. No, that's a really good point. And what do you think about, we've touched on it briefly, but like using AI as a way to help create your narrative or put together your application? Like I've seen a lot of AI CVs. Some of them, there's big variance in like how good they are. But what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, my thoughts with AI was basically anything AI is like, it's good to use it as like a first draft and like an aid, but it shouldn't be your final output. Like for anything, whether it's like an email, whether it's your CV. So I think it's good to help you give ideas, especially if you're completely stuck, right? So like, if you have like something people always struggle is like, oh, I don't know what metrics to put on my CV. I don't know what numbers. Everybody's saying put numbers, but like, I don't know what to put if I'm a UX designer. I don't know what to put if I'm in marketing, where at least like ChatGPT or AI can help you at least think about those numbers and give you examples, but then it's still your work to be able to like put it in your CV and actually embed it. So I think some people rely on it too much, but you can always tell. And so also the people that tend to not get the job and not get the responses. So I think it's a really, really good aid, and it can like up-level you so much because you basically have like a mini assistant that can help you, but you should never use it as like your final output.
No, 100% agree.
I've heard stories of like hiring teams and hiring managers just being like really impressed by a CV that was obviously like AI, not AI generated, but like AI assisted. And then like just not being impressed by the person. Because I think that it's so good. If you have like a good experience and like you have like already got good metrics in there and you like push it through like ChatGPT or something, it makes it so much better. But like you have to match up to how impressive your CV is. Like you need to be the impressive like thing, and your CV just needs to be like a little window into you.
That's the issue now. Because like me, for example, when I'm the hiring manager, I'm the first entry point after the recruiter. So like usually they do a screening call, like not even videos, like just a call over the phone, like checking a couple of boxes, and then they pass it over to the hiring manager. And then for customer facing roles like sales, customer success, like personality weights very heavily of like how you show yourself, because that's what you're going to be doing every day. So sometimes like I get people on the interview in the first 5 minutes, I know this person's not going to be a good fit. And I'm like, this is 1 hour of my time I'm allocating to this interview because they had a good CV, but then like doesn't really click.
Yeah.
So we always say that like hiring is broken. Like definitely there needs to be a way to fix that. And that's something like we have been working on as well, like trying to show more personality on your application rather than just putting a piece of paper, because everyone can write a CV. Like AI can write a CV. Cover letter is the same thing. So it's like, how do you show more personality? So that's even something like we're investing more time in. It's like video resumes of like showing yourself in your resume, like when you're applying, because one, you can probably skip the recruiter screening because the recruiter doesn't need to screen you if you have a really good pitch with your CV. And then two, the hiring manager can already get hold of that before they pull you into an interview and like waste time in the interview process. So I think there are a lot of ways to like optimize that process, and we're trying to find like what is that thing, you know.
Yeah, another thing is like recruiters and hiring managers don't spend that much time looking at CVs. Like
you
if you
just
got 10 seconds, that's pretty good.
10 seconds,
like that's pretty good already. So like even, putting like, even like if you have a good CV that's well optimized in terms of like you have the right keywords, or it like passes through the applicant tracking system and stuff, like there's still like, if you were to read every single line of the CV, it's still going to take a few minutes, which realistically recruiters and hiring managers are not going to do. Whereas if you send like a 30 to 1 minute video pitch, like you can, one, make it very tailored to that role and like why you're, good for that role, what skills you have for that role. And it's just a lot more entertaining. So like, we're like the generation that's like, we watch like 1 minute reels. So like if we're going to be paying attention to a 1 minute video where you're telling me why you're a good fit for my team, more likely going to pay more attention to that than like reading, all of your CV. And anyways, I'm just gonna be asking you questions just to make sure you're a good fit for the role either way.
Yeah, it's such an important point because it's easy to blame the recruiters and the hiring managers and say like they're just not paying attention to my CV, but you do have to empathize with them and be like, I've put this job's been up for like 2-3 days and there's hundreds of applicants and I've got a couple of hours to have a look through all of them to decide who goes into the next stage. And it is like, what is the arbitrary decision? How am I going to make that decision? It's going to be based on a very tiny amount of information. So anything you can do to kind of stand out and get your personality across is really important.
Yeah.
So aside from the like video resume, do you have any other tip for what you would do to get your personality across in an application?
I think whether it's personality or your strength. So for example, even if you're messaging someone like a recruiter or hiring manager. So for example, like, hey, you know, I see you've got this role open. Just tell you a bit about myself. You know, I've worked on X, Y, and Z project, but then mention projects that you know are in the job description. So, you know, if like it's a marketing role and they're asking for like SEO and ABM, then mention, you know, I've worked on like SEO and ABM with this, and this client. And, you know, it's brought these results. So like, it's all about like kind of, again, the piece of the puzzle, like making sure that you're just making it so clear for them, like why you'd be a fit. So I think like making it personalized is another thing. And just making sure that whatever strength you choose to share are very specific to what the hiring manager is looking for. Because like even the other day I was speaking to someone, and again, like incredible background. Like the guy, I was like, why not? And he was telling me he was getting interviews, but he was not getting offers. And I was like, wow, it's like I was a bit surprised because like when he was telling me, you know, his CV, like his background was super impressive. He founded his own company. He like fundraised like a couple million. I was like, I mean, you're clearly capable. So like there's something going on that you're saying that isn't hitting. And like, yeah, like he gave me an example of one of the messages, and it was something like, I don't remember word for word, but it was just something like, see a role, like you should hire me, something like that, like without giving like a reason. And then just like the same thing, like for example, when, you know, answering like questions like, why do you want to work at this company? It's like, oh, because you're based in London. I'm like, mate, there's like millions of companies that are based in London. Like you're not giving an answer as to why you want to work for that company specifically. So I think like that level of personalization is very important that people don't tend to hit, whether it's in their CV, in their networking, or in their interviews.
Yes.
Yeah.
And a couple of years you just didn't have to. The job market was a very different place. You could just say that.
You've raised a few mil. It's like, wow, you can do that over here.
Exactly. Like that's literally like a prime thing that you should have said. It's like, you know, like raise a couple million.
You have a network to leverage. You need to start putting in all that information. The job market is tough. Like I left, well, this can get cut, but I actually left my job like last year because I wanted a break. But I'm not looking forward to jumping back in. Like I've got so many really experienced friends that are like, that have just been looking for jobs for like the past year, and they have done the jobs that they are looking for, like looking to get, and they are just not like getting the job. They're like getting interviews, but then not like progressing. And I think that's not something I'm looking forward to. So I'm going to take all of your tips when I eventually decide that I...
No, it's tough because I remember even like beginning of 2023, like I was laid off from the big tech that I was working at. And, you know, I was like, you know, had a few days where I was like crying. I was like, why me? But then I was like, you know what? It's fine. Looked at it from a very logical perspective. I was like, lots of tech companies are laying off right now. I wasn't in like a business critical role. I was doing like go-to-market strategy. I'm like, obviously, and I kind of had already, because there were so many companies laying off, I kind of knew, I was like, if my company is going to lay off, like I know my role is at risk because all I'm doing is like building 3-year strategies, which has like an ROI of 3 years. Like they want to keep people that have an impact today. So they're going to need like client-facing roles and things like that. So I knew that if my company was going to lay off, I knew I was very likely my role was also going to be made redundant. So I just looked at it from a very logical perspective, and I was like, okay, fine, let's just get back into it. And so, you know, like I do pride myself in like my interviewing skills, my networking skills. Like I don't think that's necessarily something I, you know, lack. And then I just went into it. I managed to get like a lot of interviews. Like in the first 2 weeks, I think I got like 8 or 9.
Wow.
But then they were dropping like flies. Like, oh, this role is on, now we're like freezing this role. Oh, now we're like doing layoffs. Oh, we no longer have budget. So like I literally had like 9 interviews lined up. And like out of those 9 interviews, like basically all of them just ended up halting or like nothing ended up happening. So this was like the peak of like the really bad times. And then I actually ended up getting my role from LinkedIn. Like I posted a few times on LinkedIn, you know, like I was laid off, you know, and I talked about like how it's an opportunity and like not a bad thing, you know, gave my very like growth mindset view on it. And I posted about like 2 or 3 times. And like by the 3rd time I was saying like, yeah, wow, like the ups and downs of this job market is like really tough. You know, I've entered interviews, already having next steps booked in the calendar. And then on the day of that next step, just like people telling me that like the interview's not happening anymore and like this isn't something that I'm used to. And then the recruiter that ended up hiring me at my current company reached out to me. He was like, yeah, you know, I've seen like your posts, like sorry to hear, you know, that you were laid off. You know, I'd love to just have a chat with you to understand a bit more about your career. And we ended up having a couple of conversations before he put me in the interview process. But like, that's, for example, a way that I managed to get my role, which was like purely through like networking and personal branding. And like, actually, he told me that that role, because I kind of put into the interview process early, that role was never actually put on the internet. Like they never ended up saying like revenue operations role at this company we're hiring. So he was just like, because even when I started interviewing, I asked him, I was like, oh, can you send me a job description then just so I can understand like what the hiring manager is looking for, because I want to tailor my answers, my experiences that I'm going to share to, you know, the job description. And he was like, yeah, we didn't have time to write one. Like, do you just want to be in the interview process or no? Like, yes or no? And I'm like, okay, just put me in. But which also meant that I was competing with a lot less people because the role was never out there. So he was interviewing people from his network and like from people that he headhunted directly before like actually putting the role online. So yeah, not saying that every single role happens that way, but like there is definitely those cases where, you know.
And we're seeing that more and more now, like as well, even with the messages I receive of like people hiring, it's like, oh, we're hiring for this job, but it's not posted yet, or this role is confidential. And then I started talking to recruiters. I was like, why are you guys not posting roles anymore? And then everyone is like, oh, because the moment we do, we have 5,000 people applying and we have 5,000 people reaching out to us on message, and the recruiter doesn't want to be bombarded with messages on LinkedIn. So now they're actually not posting as many jobs anymore, and they're like doing the sourcing all themselves. So like that's also going to grow as like they see the market is completely like crazy.
So that's so interesting. That's like a direct impact of that mass blast sending out all of your applications. Literally. And like you managed to overcome it by having a human aspect to what you did, and you like put yourself out there in a really brave and vulnerable way, like, and that paid off in that you were able to connect with somebody that was able to get you into a role that wasn't even advertised. That's so cool.
Yeah, no, it is cool. But even to like what Joanna was saying, like so many recruiters are actively sourcing now. Like they just don't even like pay attention to cold applications because there's so many, and then also so many of them are irrelevant. So it's like I'm better off actively sourcing candidates than I am looking through this list of cold applications. And I mean, obviously there are still some that are good, but like they actually find better talent by going to finding them themselves than it is going through the applications. And like even people at big tech companies, like I was speaking to one of my friends who works, you know, one of the FANGs, and she was saying like, oh yeah, no, like I actively source. And I was like, but what? Like you work at one of the FANGs, like surely you get tons of great applications. And she's like, yeah, I mean, no, like over 70% of them like are completely irrelevant. Like as in I'm hiring for sales and all of a sudden I have somebody with a finance background who's applying for this, and I'm like, what am I supposed to do with this information? So she was just like, yeah, no, I actually spend more time either actively sourcing or going through like the referrals that get sent in because I get better value there and my time is better spent there than actually looking through like every single cold application. Like there's a percentage of the cold applications which are worthwhile, but I was still very surprised to hear the split of like even a big tech company, because I thought, okay, startups make sense. You don't have brand awareness, so like people maybe don't want to apply, so you have to actively source. But she was like, no, even in big tech companies, like that's how.
Because that LinkedIn easy apply, you just click a button and you've applied for like every job that is on there.
Literally.
And I think it's actually not helping companies at all. Oh, I would hate to be a hiring manager right now.
Yeah,
because you're holding people's like lives in your.
Yeah, it's true. It's true.
And then it's like, why are you applying for this role? This is not for you. Like, it's stressful.
It is stressful, but you're someone that's like been able to get jobs without necessarily applying for them. As in, you've had people approach you because of your active participation in hackathons and events and conferences, and I think that's such an understated way of like exposing you to the people that are looking for
Absolutely. There is something about like posting. LinkedIn is a great place for that. You know, like
Yeah.
I posted and like I went to I'm from the blockchain space and I went to my first ever blockchain conference and I wrote like a Medium article about it. And if I read it now, I'm like, what are you talking about? But at the time, I was like, wow, a whole new world.
You're so excited.
I was so excited. But that opened the door to like a very incredible opportunity just from that. And I was brand new. I just wrote something and I put it out there. Like I sent it out into the world and some really great things came back. So yeah, like it is like real. Like just putting yourself out there, like doing more kind of personal things. Yeah, and I did get my first like blockchain job without an
That's
interview
crazy.
and
That's
a CV.
so good.
Yeah, I was just curious. I think that's the thing.
Yeah.
But like when you're new or just like anyone, just be curious about what it is that you're trying to get into.
Yeah.
Ask questions and like don't have too much pride.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're gonna be wrong all the time.
All the time.
Yeah.
I mean, we say that all the time. Like when we're hiring, we're like, no, I'd rather hire somebody that has like the curiosity, skills, and like that just like always wants to learn versus somebody who's like done it forever, but like they don't, like you feel like they're not gonna want to learn something new.
Yeah.
Like I'd rather have a learn it all than a know it all type of person.
Yeah.
Especially in
100%.
tech.
100%.
Like I feel like maybe in professional services, you know, it's more like consulting. So like you're kind of expected to be a know-it-all. Whereas in tech, that mindset is very much like, I want a learn it all. I want somebody who's, even if they're at the peak of their career, like they're always looking for, you know, what's happening in the market, like ways to make it better because tech is always changing. And there's a lot of that shift because I even see that like, you know, some people come to me and they're like, Roxanne, like I have an MBA and like I'm struggling to get into tech. Like I don't get it. And I'm like, I mean, obviously it matters, but it's like, it's not like, that's not what's going to get you the job. Like at least in tech, it's not because you have the MBA that you're going to get the job. Like what matters more is like how you're presenting in your interview, the answers you're giving in your interview, how critically you're showing you're thinking about the company. Your case study is like the way to really the place to like wow the person to be like, now I need this person in my role or in this role ASAP. So yeah, I think sometimes people look at their qualifications a little bit too much and they're like, oh, because I have all of these qualifications, like I should definitely get this job, where it's like, but tech doesn't always think that way. Like they're not always like, you need to be from the best universities to get the job. Like they more just want to know like, are you going to be willing to do it even like when there's no answer? Like I need you to like, I tell you, here's the problem, go figure it out. Like I need that mindset. That's the mindset I need on the team versus like, you know, I know X, Y, and Z theory.
No, qualifications are mattering like less and less. Of course, it depends on the role you're applying for. If you're applying for like a software engineer, you need to know like the languages and etc. But companies are highlighting much more like soft skills, especially in the interview process. To like identify what you're saying, like adaptability, like are you gonna go above and beyond? Like are you taking the lead on like projects and things like that? So yeah, so that's like gonna be more and more important.
Which is also, it can be a bit hard as well to show, evaluate. Like it's like, you know, adaptability, like how do you evaluate that? Like resilience, how do you evaluate that? Which to me is always like why I use the case study stage, is like this is always like the stage where I'm like, okay, this is where I'm gonna know whether like you're good or not, or like whether you like, you know, that you're somebody that I want on my team. Because the case study stage, like I always leave it very open-ended. And I'm like, now I just want to see without any prompt how above and beyond you're going to go, basically, without like me pushing you. I just want to see like, here's the problem. Here's like the data, how far, like, how deep are you going to go into this analysis, and like how many ideas are you going to come up with, which, you know, like we can implement basically today.
And it's funny as well, like how people don't want to spend that much time applying for jobs and like doing case studies and things like that, because that's also something that we hear of like, oh, like I don't want to personalize my CV because then it takes a lot of time to do that, and then like I don't want to spend all that time doing that. Or like in case studies, you see people that probably spent like maybe like 20 minutes going over it and like preparing it, and it's like people are complaining, but at the same time they're not putting the effort of like actually like trying to impress and like doing a good job. It's like it's better for you to apply for 10 roles really well than apply for like 100 just because of the sake of it. It's the same thing for interview. Like you need to put the time in and the effort in. And like, if you don't, you're not going to get a job. So,
and also like as a job seeker, I really like case studies because it's like, this allows you, because you're doing like a little piece of the job, basically, it allows you to also evaluate like, am I going to enjoy this job or not? So I think that's another thing that's really important. Like as a job seeker, you also need to be aware of like, what it is that you're looking for. Like there's case studies that I've done, which I enjoyed so much. I was like, yeah, this is so fun. Like I've spent way too much time on this. Should not have been spending so much time, but like I genuinely enjoyed it. And then there are other case studies that I did and I was like, wow, I despised this case study. Like even if I got the offer, I'm not going to do this because I just genuinely didn't enjoy doing this piece of work. Like I'll do it because, you gave it to me and like I'm obviously going to hand it in. But like there's times where, it kind of just allows you as a job seeker to also evaluate like, would I actually enjoy the work of this role?
Yeah.
So I think it's good for both ends actually, the case study.
Yeah.
Join us next week where we'll be speaking to Roxanne and Joanna more about their new project they're building with ResLink. And we'll also be speaking to them more about how TechTalk is supporting underrepresented people in the job market.